a black belt champion, moving with the lethal precision of years of combat training, delivered a devastating kick straight to the face of a royal guard. The sheer force sent the guard's traditional bearskin cap flying through the air, tumbling across the stone pavement. A moment of silence gripped the crowd, shock, amusement, and unease mixing in the gathered tourists. But then, something unexpected happened. The ceremonial statue moved, and in that instant, every ounce of tournament training, every belt, every title the martial artist had ever earned, none of it could prepare him for what came next. The spectators held their breath as arrogance clashed with unshakable military discipline. The lesson that followed would be one he would never forget. The morning light stretched across the pristine grounds of Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows over the growing crowd. Tourists lined up behind the barriers, cameras at the ready, eager to witness the famous changing of the guard. Among them, standing out in his designer tracksuit and custom gold Rolex, was Ryan Chun. At 32 years old, Ryan had built a name for himself as one of America's most dominant martial arts champions, a man with 3 international titles under his belt and a franchise of elite training academies across California. His Instagram bio said it all: undefeated, untouchable, unstoppable. Ryan exhaled sharply, shaking his head as he watched the stoic guard stand in perfect formation. This was the level of security for British royalty? He scoffed. "In my world," he muttered, adjusting his Rolex, "a fighter who stands still is just begging to be taken down." The 4 men surrounding him, his training partners, protégés, and the core of Chen's elite combat system, nodded in agreement, their matching jackets marking them as a unit. Years of training together had forged an unspoken hierarchy, and in their world, Ryan was the undisputed leader. "Remember Tokyo last year?" one of them said, smirking. "That Swedish champion who said he was unbeatable? You folded him in under 40 seconds. Ryan's lips curled at the memory. That was a real fight, a real test. Not this. His gaze settled on one guard in particular. The man stood like a marble statue, utterly motionless in his scarlet tunic, his tall bearskin cap adding to the air of rigid discipline. But Ryan didn't see a warrior. He saw an easy target. His professional eye analyzed the stance, searching for weaknesses. "Look at this guy," he murmured to his team. "No center of gravity, no defensive posture, completely vulnerable." From a short distance away, Colonel James Thornton, retired Royal Marine, observed the scene unfold. A veteran of 30 years, Thornton had seen his share of real warriors, the kind who fought in silence, the kind whose scars weren't for show. And in Ryan, he recognized something dangerous, the energy of a man who mistook confidence for invincibility. Ryan stepped closer to the guard, his presence disruptive in the otherwise disciplined atmosphere. A few tourists noticed and shifted uncomfortably. Others, intrigued, began to gather, sensing an impromptu performance. "Let me show you what a real fighter looks like," Ryan announced, his voice carrying over the courtyard. He moved with the grace of a predator, shifting his weight, circling the guard. A true fighter is always ready, always moving. His footwork was light, deliberate, his movement sharp and controlled. "These guys," he gestured toward the silent soldier, "they've trained the instincts right out of them." From his spot in the crowd, Colonel Thornton's jaw tightened. Ryan had no idea what he was playing with. Ryan turned to the onlookers. "You want to know the difference between ceremony and combat?" He shadowboxed in place, his fists cutting through the air in a blur. "Everything I do is built for one thing, winning." Some in the crowd watched with mild amusement, others with unease. A family quietly guided their children away. Ryan's group subtly spread out, instinctively forming a demonstration circle around the guard. The casual tourist didn't notice, but Thornton did. It was a deliberate setup, an attempt to turn this moment into an unofficial sparring match. "You see," Ryan continued, "real combat is about efficiency. We train for adaptability, not standing around like statues." He pivoted suddenly, launching a controlled series of jabs, each one stopping mere inches from the guard's face. The air rippled with the force of his strikes. Harrington, the guard, didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react. Ryan laughed. "That's not discipline, folks. That's fear." Behind him, his team chuckled, feeding off his bravado. Thornton stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Son, I'd rethink what you're about to do." Ryan barely spared him a glance. "Relax, old man. It's just a demonstration." A flicker of something unreadable crossed Thornton's face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ryan ignored him. His focus was on the guard, on proving a point. "Time for a practical demonstration," he declared, stretching his arms, rolling his shoulders. "Because theory is one thing, but experience? That's what separates the greats from the rest." He moved into a combat stance, shifting his weight, eyes locked onto his unflinching opponent. The atmosphere thickened. The crowd, now fully invested, leaned in. A few people instinctively stepped back. Something was about to happen. Ryan feinted left. No response. He pivoted right, testing angles. Nothing. A final smirk crossed his face. "Let's finish this." Then he struck. A blindingly fast spinning heel kick, executed with the force and precision of a world champion, slammed into the side of Harrington's face. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The impact sent the guard's bearskin cap soaring through the air in a dramatic arc. The crowd collectively gasped. Ryan landed gracefully, his victorious grin already forming. And that is why... But something was wrong. Harrington hadn't fallen. He hadn't even staggered. His head had snapped sideways with the force of the blow, but his body had absorbed it without yielding an inch. The grin vanished from Ryan's face. His blood ran cold, because for the first time since arriving, Harrington's eyes had moved, and they were locked directly onto his. Not with anger, not with pain, but with something far worse. Calculating intent. "Oh!" One of Ryan's teammates breathed, all bravado gone. Time seemed to slow. The weight of the moment settled like a storm rolling in. And then Harrington moved. It wasn't a slow reaction of a man unused to combat. It wasn't a flinch or a defensive step backward. It was lethal efficiency. The rifle clattered to the ground as the guard closed the distance in an instant. Ryan barely had time to process before the first strike came. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't excessive. It was devastating. Ryan stumbled, instincts kicking in, but it didn't matter, because the man in front of him wasn't a ceremonial performer. He was something else entirely. And Ryan had just made the biggest mistake of his life.